Democratic leader of the House, Nancy Pelosi, is under pressure from both sides to leave the position she's held for 15 years. Her name has become a rallying cry in Republican attack ads, including this one that ran ahead of Ohio's special election last week. Democrat Danny O'Connor lost that race by 1 percentage point. But it's not just the GOP taking on the 78-year-old Congresswoman from California. Dozens of Democratic House candidates have indicated they would like to see new leadership if they are able to retake the House in November. In the past, Pelosi has brushed off criticism, but last week she told the New York Times she is building a bridge and paving the way for a new generation of leaders. For more, I want to bring in CBS News chief congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes. All right, so Nancy, do some Democrats feel Nancy Pelosi has become a problem as they look to regain control of the House?
Well, it's more than some at this point. In fact, you've got dozens of current Democrats in office and also contenders who are trying to get into public office who say point blank that they either won't support Nancy Pelosi if elected or reelected, or more broadly that they support the notion of new leadership and they think that it's time for a fresh start. Nancy Pelosi herself has always been pretty sanguine about this kind of thing. She's always said, you know, whatever works in your district, if you need to distance yourself from me, fine, I understand. But we're seeing a lot more of it this time around than we have in previous cycles.
So Congressman Joe Crowley, who recently lost his primary, was a top contender to replace Pelosi. Do we know who else is vying for the top spot?
No one who has made their interest public so far, Elaine. The fact that Crowley was defeated in that surprise primary election that swept Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez into the top spot in that race in New York really left Democrats without an obvious replacement for Pelosi if she were to falter. Crowley wasn't intending to take on Pelosi directly, but he said that if she couldn't get the votes that she needed, that he would be there to step in and that he would then consider running for the top spot on the Democratic side. Now, her two lieutenants in the House, Steny Hoyer of Maryland, James Clyburn of Georgia, they have both said as well that they would be interested in stepping up if she can't get the votes that she needs. And correction, Clyburn of South Carolina, not Georgia. But the problem is that they are viewed by many in the rank and file as akin to Nancy Pelosi. They have been around as long as she has. All three of them are in their late 70s. And you have a number of younger Democrats who argue it is time for a new generation of leadership. And that the fact that so many of these very experienced, longtime lawmakers have held on to these top spots for so long has meant that these younger lawmakers haven't had the opportunities that they believe they deserve to move up the ladder and get that kind of leadership experience.
Nancy, I thought it was interesting that Pelosi told the New York Times that she wants to, quote unquote, build a bridge for the next generation of Democrats. Is that the first time we're seeing her acknowledge that she will not be in that position forever?
You can read that, Elaine, as Pelosi making the case very subtly. Sure, she's not going to hold on to this leadership position for all time, but that there has to be someone on the other side of the baton who has the experience and proven fundraising ability that she has, who is ready to take over the reins of the Democratic Party. The case that she has been making, even in the face of some of this criticism from her own party, is, look, nobody raises as much money as she does for the party, and that is a fact. No one disputes that. And that she has the wiles, the experience, the relationships, the legislative know-how that almost no one else in the House of Representatives has. And so the case that she makes again and again is, if Democrats take back the House, you're going to need someone with that experience to really make the most of it. And there are many Democrats in the House who agree with her, but there are others who say, but what if the fact that Nancy Pelosi is the leader of the Democratic Party keeps the party from winning control of the House? What if she is such an easy target, especially in these races in the middle of the country where the party has lost working class white voters and needs to win them back? What if that in and of itself is what prevents the party from taking taking advantage of what would otherwise be a very favorable political environment for them.
And on this notion of being a target, in many ways, Pelosi has become a perfect foil for Republicans. I want to play some sound from President Trump back in June. Let's listen.
I want to keep Nancy Pelosi right where she is with Maxine Waters. I want to keep Nancy Pelosi. Please, I want to make a plea to my Democrat friends. Please, please, please don't remove Nancy Pelosi. She should be where she is. And please keep Maxine Waters on the air as your face and your mouthpiece for the Democrat Party.
All right, so Nancy, what about that? Would Nancy Pelosi stepping aside actually hurt Republicans?
Sure. I mean, she has been a very convenient boogeyman for Republican politicians for a couple of decades now, and they have spent tens of millions of dollars on ads in races all across the country, tying Democratic candidates to her. And that has almost become kind of a shorthand, particularly in this cycle when you have a lot of first-time Democratic candidates running for office. It can be very difficult to define someone like that very quickly in a race. But if you can say, well, so-and-so is merely going to be a foot soldier for Nancy Pelosi, progressive from San Francisco, that's something that voters might be able to latch onto and can easily, start to create an impression in their minds of who this person is. Republicans have gone back to that playbook again and again. Now, there is, interestingly, some recent polling that shows that that might not be as effective a strategy this time around, that Nancy Pelosi is not top of mind for many voters. And in fact, that their opinions about Donald Trump are going to weigh much more heavily in their decision making than she will. But certainly she will be a factor to some extent. And that is why you even have some Democrats saying she should step down from her leadership role now. She shouldn't even wait to see whether Democrats win back control of the House in November, because they believe that she should take herself out of this maelstrom once and for all. I should tell you, she herself has shown absolutely no interest in doing that. She argues she is doing a great job for the party, that she is spending all weekend, every weekend, fundraising for the party, and she intends to see this through.
Well, according to the Wesleyan Media Project, which tracks political ads, Nancy Pelosi was the most targeted congressional leader between January and June of this year. Now, Pelosi has called these attacks against her sexist. Do we know, Nancy, why is she saying that?
She still is the only woman who I think has accused me of sexism. I asked her that very question a couple of years ago after Democrats lost seats in the House, whether perhaps she should consider ceding leadership. And she said that that was a sexist question. She said that the men don't get asked that same question. Now, that's not actually true. We ask that question of Republicans and Democrats when their parties lose seats in the House or the Senate. But nevertheless, she and a number of her allies argue that she has been targeted in a way that the men simply haven't. And it is interesting to note, Elaine, that even among members of her own party who argue that it's time for her to go or that it's time for new leadership, they don't most of the time identify something that she herself is doing wrong. In fact, even some of her toughest critics say, yes, she is very effective. Yes, she is a legislative master. Yes, she is a fundraising master, which then has led Pelosi in turn and many of her backers to say, well, then why should she be stepping down? She's still doing her very best for this party. But it is certainly something that she feels very strongly, that she has been the target of sexist attacks. And there's no question that she has become a bigger boogeyman for the opposition party than any other lawmaker.
All right, Nancy Cordes in Washington for us. Nancy, thanks very much.
You're welcome, Elaine.